Hey, this is Carlo at 4GQTV.com, and we have Paul with us on this interview, who is a good friend of Steve here, which we're about to interview. And we
You
have
forgot his
Steve
last
here.
name, didn't you? You forgot his last name, didn't you?
No, it's right on the screen. Steve Barton. I
There
got
you
it.
go.
I got it. And Steve Barton's here with us.
I've been called a lot worse throughout my life. So yeah, it's fine.
So for those
So,
of you who don't here, I'll do the rest here for you. For those of you who don't know, Steve is a producer and an actor and now an author. And we are going to talk to Steve about his book. He is a producer, but he was one of the producers of Terrifier 2. And he just had I had it on the tip of my tongue, a movie come out recently that I just watched, which was also very well done.
All Hallows Eve Inferno.
He's also been in Hatchet, or one of the Hatchets.
Hatchet 2.
Two of the Hatchets, yeah. And he was one of George A. Romero's undead
Yeah,
or zombies.
I played the featured zombie in George Romero's last movie, Survival of the Dead.
So he's been around the horror circles for a long time, and he got some stories to tell.
Yeah,
Uh,
just over 30 years now, I believe. And it's been a crazy ride, man. First of all, before we even start, I really want to say thank you, Paul, for taking the time to read the book. I know reading a book is a commitment, and I can only hope that it didn't seem arduous or like I hope you had fun at
oh,
times.
absolutely. It was funny because the weekend you sent me the book was the weekend that I lost internet for 8 hours. So
Oh,
so I got something to do. So
I
I read them.
promise I had nothing to do with it.
Steve rigged the internet so you would read his book.
That's right. That's right.
You don't know the powers I've had. Not only was I one of the internet pioneers, but yeah, I got the off button right behind.
But it worked out really well. And I will say, and I'm going to say this a lot, the book is great. You did a great job telling stories. And like I've said you, and when I messaged you, there would be a really dark part of the book. And all of a sudden I'd find myself laughing.
Yeah.
And it's like, and you question, should I be laughing at this? I mean, this is pretty dark stuff. Yeah.
Well,
So,
laughter, I guess it even came through in the writing. I've been through some shit. My story's not unique, but I've been through some shit that some people don't get lucky enough to come back from. And the main reason I've always been able to deal with what I've dealt with was because I always just tried to find a humor in it. And laughter and humor is very much my defense mechanism. So even when writing that out, even though at first I was just writing it for me, my defense mechanism would creep back in and I'd say something absurd or just elaborate or put something a certain way that sometimes you don't know whether to laugh. Is it appropriate? I don't know. I think everything is fair game. It's up to the reader. I mean, I never intended to publish that was not my intention whatsoever. I was doing the psychological thing. I have a lot of demons rattling around in here, and I figured I had always heard people say that if you just write them down, maybe you can get them out. So I started writing because I felt like I needed to be free of these things finally. And in order to really write it, I had to open up doors in my head that I had kept shut, locked, airtight for many, many years, and in some cases, decades. And the reason why I reopened them is because I felt like I had the need to get it all out of my system. Anything I remembered is in there. And I was writing it specifically for me. I never, I write like I speak, so it was very challenging. There are parts in the book that you'll read where it says, I know this is coming up. I'm not really ready to write about this yet. I'll be back in 2 weeks. It's almost like I was journaling to myself.
right.
And as it happens, I wrote it for about 2 years. And at 2 years, I was right at the halfway point of the book. And my life exploded once again, which it does, which everyone's does. And I ended up moving from California back here to the East Coast. And I ended up getting married. I still don't know who the fuck said that was okay or that would ever happen, but so be it. I don't think I've ever been happier in terms of my personal life. But one day I was sitting here working right where I am right now, and my wife Danielle walked over and she's like, "Hey, you still have that book you were writing?" And I'm like, "Well, not really a book, but yeah, I wrote out a bunch of shit." And she's like, "Well, can I read it?" And I'm like, "Well, what the fuck for, dude? You married me. You know everything, you know?" But she was kind of insistent, so I emailed her what I had. At that time, it was like somewhere around 200 pages, and I sat here and I kept working, and every now and then I'd hear her laughing, or I'd hear her sniffling, or I'd hear her crying, or I'd hear her laughing, and I'm like, God, what the fuck did I do? So when she came downstairs, was almost ready to hear her say, "I want a divorce," and I probably would have blamed her, but she sat down and she sat across from me and she's like, "You can't burn this." And I was like, "Well, why?" She goes, "Because the things that you talk about in here is talked about in such an honest, brutal way that I don't think I've seen anything like that before. I don't think anyone has seen anything that raw before." And she went on to say, she thinks that if possible, this book could help people, help people feel not as alone, help people feel like even though they're at the end of their rope, shit can get better if you just hang in there, right? So I took what she said to heart and I thought about it. And then I took the next 2 years to finish writing it. And here we are, man. It's almost ready to come out, but I had to go back to when I was first starting and just not edit anything. I didn't take a single sentence out, but I added to it so it would be more book like. You know what I mean?
Right. And not just a diary of thoughts, but actually.
So I didn't take out a single line. Had I have thought about actually publishing it, I probably wouldn't have spoken as in depth as I did in a lot of the instances. But once it was already out, I said, fuck it and let it fly. I'm not going to go back and start editing myself. That's not who I am.
Right.
So I was going to do what I always do. I was just going to publish it myself and be like, all right, here you go. Anybody wants to read it? Here's what happened. And one of my good friends, Josh Milliken, who he was the one who took over for me when I left Dread Central. And he emailed and he's like, hey, can I read this? Because he wanted to, I think he really wanted to know what happened with Dread Central 2, because nobody really knew anything. It was like one day I just tipped the fuck out the door. So he read it and he wrote me back like 2 weeks later. He's like, dude, this is incredible. I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah, what are you doing with this? And I was like, I'm just going to self-publish it, man. He's like, no, 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 don't do that. Just wait a minute. Let me send it to my people at Encyclopocalypse, because he's an author as well. And I'm like, oh, all right, fine. And the next day they called me and they're like, we want to put it out. And I think they wanted to put it out because I wrote it, which is a huge compliment.
Right.
But I asked him, did you read it? And he was like, well, no, but you wrote it. I mean, no, 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 no. You have to know what you're getting yourself into. This isn't just me as Uncle Creepy telling industry stories. I mean, yeah, that shit is in there, and then there's a lot of it, but it's also what it took to get me to this point, you know? And it's a lot of personal shit. It's a lot of heart wrenching shit, and it a lot of weird shit, for lack of a better term. So I told them, because only I would be like, nah, man, I don't want to make money. You read it first. And they took 2 weeks and they came back and they're like, well, now we have to put it out because it is that good and we think it's an important book. And I'm still like, what? Because honestly, Paul and Carlo, I mean, the shit that I dealt with, it was just normal to me. I didn't think that anything strange was happening. I mean, this was just everyday life to me. And I said, fuck it. I signed the contract, and now we're about 2 weeks out from pre-orders going out, or even 1 week out. I don't even know.
I think it's 1 week because you posted the other day. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's just it's surreal to me. It's a little unnerving that in a few weeks, literally anyone out there can know every single thing about me, just short of my dick size. But it was like
Let me say thank you for leaving that out of the book. I realized.
I had to save something for my wife. It's unnerving, and honestly, I'm terrified. I don't know what the reaction's gonna be. I mean, so far it's been great, and I've been really humbled by some truly kind words from you and a lot of the other people who have read it already. And I don't know, man. I think the bottom line is, if it can reach somebody or help somebody, and if that's just one person, then it was worth it. And that's just my outlook on it's what happened. I mean, I didn't really leave too many stones unturned.
No, you really didn't. I will say that I will not be surprised if after the book is wide release, that Dread Central starts trending for a while again, because there's a lot of stuff that came out there that nobody's known about.
There are
Yeah,
some people probably a little nervous, but you know what? At the end of the day, I just told the truth.
yeah,
And I have multiple files upon files that back up every single thing I said.
and that's the thing too. And you made clear that in the book too. You're like, it's all documented. It's there. So
Yeah, you know, and even so, I mean, the main thing that ended up making me leave Dread Central, I didn't cover because it's just not time yet.
Right,
And maybe one day it will be time, because there was one other really horrendous thing that totally made up my mind for me, but I left that out for now.
right.
But the whole build up to it is right there.
Yep.
It wouldn't have taken much more anyway to make me leave, but it is what
Yeah.
it is. I think that people are gonna read it and make up their own minds. I don't want
Yep.
anyone to read my book and be like, well, fuck this one or fuck that one and screw
Yeah.
these guys. Or I don't want that. That's not what I want. I want people to enjoy whatever it is they enjoy, whether it be Dread Central
Yeah.
or Terrifier or whatever.
I
You know,
will say all it's done for me, because as you've alluded to, I did read it a few weeks ago when we first started talking about doing this. That it made me think about, because I've met like some of the guys and you know that I've talked to them a little bit, not near, but it made me rethink. Okay, made me rethink the person. That they come across one way, but then you kind of go, okay, there's this show business side that I may not necessarily like. This, and but I've dealt with celebrities all my life too because of my upbringing, and
right.
so I know that they're not always the way they appear. You know,
They're there, and sometimes people get painted a certain way, and it
right,
turns out that's not who they are.
right,
And I found that out the hard way. And it is what it is. I want people to keep enjoying and loving
right.
whatever it is that they love. I don't want anyone to
Yeah,
read a book and come away from it with ill feelings toward any one entity or any one person.
yep,
Ultimately, it's up to them to decide. But I'm never going to be the one to tell anybody, well, you shouldn't like that because this happened, or you
right.
shouldn't like this because that happened. That's just not
Yep.
me, you know?
Nope. It's like when two people that are breaking up, getting divorced or whatever, and then sometimes they expect you to take a side. You're like, I don't want to take a side. You're
No,
both my friends. You know.
right. And it's unfair to ask
Yeah.
somebody to do that. Again, I can't tell anyone
Right.
how they should feel, because no one can.
Right.
I think that people can make up their own minds in terms of what they think. I mean, I just said what happened, you
Yeah.
know, and that's all I could do.
Now, for those that might be watching, realize that we're talking about the horror side of it, and he's got a tons of stories. But this book goes much deeper than that. This goes from almost the day he was born, and
Yeah,
through his young childhood, and there was a lot of a lot of happening there that a lot of people would have been like, "What the hell?"
but
You know?
again, I
So
never I never knew any of that was weird.
Right.
It's normal.
Right.
So, I mean, I'm just from hearing a little bit what you're speaking and what Paul's been talking about on your book. I haven't had a chance to read it, but I'm very curious, so I may go ahead and try to read it. But one thing that sticks out to me is that it sounds like that people are very complex, right? And that leads me to a curious question. So, with your experience and your insight, have you been treated differently by people versus how they treat other people based on their complexities? Because sometimes what happens is that I've noticed in let's just say voice acting or celebrities is that could be a good person in power or has a powerful position. They might treat somebody really well and then somebody else really bad because they have a perception of this person based on other people. And does that happen a lot in your field of work?
It happens constantly in my field of work. However, I've been at it for 30 years. There's not a single person in this industry, in the horror industry, I should say, that I haven't either worked with or known or whatever. And in terms of how I handled my career, I was always honest with everyone. I always, whether they liked what I said or they didn't like what I said, they would respect it because they knew I was telling them how I felt. In terms of how people treat you, people are going to people, man. That's what they do. And sometimes people will kiss your ass, and sometimes people will drag your ass through the street. And no matter how good you try to be, or how awful a person you are, or whatever the case, you're always going to be the superhero in somebody's story and the supervillain in somebody's story. And there's nothing you can do about that because you have no power over that. But what you have absolute control over is how you react to it. I've had a lot of things happen from people who were really, really close with me, whose lives I completely changed for the better, that kind of left me in the dust once they were up and running, and that's fine. I get to choose how I feel about that. I get to choose how I react to that, and personally. And a lot of times the public reaction and the personal reaction couldn't be more different, but you need to be able to understand it from all sides. You know what I mean? The public will react one way, the people who really know you will react another, because they really know you or they really get you. And we all know that everyone's going to have their own perception of things and you're not going to change it. You can't tell somebody how their food tastes. You can't, you
And
know?
like you alluded to, it doesn't do you any good to go out there and bash these people that you think wronged you,
No, it
rightfully or
doesn't.
wrongly. You know,
It's bitter because you know what?
yeah,
When shit happens to you, yeah, it's unfortunate. It sucks sometimes. What are you gonna do? You gonna let it eat at you, or you just
right.
gonna decide to put down the bags and move on with your life? I've always put down the bags and moved on with my life. One of my good friends, Mike Felsher, who I adore, I know Mike for probably 20 years. I sent him the book to read, and he called me. He's like, I don't even know what to say because I didn't know you went through all of that. He goes, but the most impressive thing is you never complained about it, not a single time. I'm not a woe is me person. I'm a, okay, that happened. What's next person? You know what I mean? How do you get right back on track? Because you can't, only you could allow yourself to be derailed, dude. You can also put yourself right back on the track.
Yeah,
And I've been at square one so many times that I'm good friends with Mr. Square One.
yeah,
And me and Mr. Square One, we go way back, unfortunately.
yeah.
So I think Mr. Square One's probably annoyed with me because I keep getting ahead and I keep getting, he's like, again, dude, you're back here again.
Yeah.
But, I don't give up. It's not in me to throw my hands up and say, that's it, I've had it. I may say it out of
Yeah.
frustration sometimes or out of anger or whatever it is, but I know
I,
deep inside I
I
keep
have to say that's little me, Carlo. Will tell you if I'm having that I will complain for about 2 minutes and then okay, let's go. Let's just whatever. But like you, I've been at square one and beyond square one. I mean, I've been at -5 a few times.
Yeah.
But you either have to figure out how to deal with it or just go, you know, and it's not in me to go fuck
Yeah.
it. And I will and I know this isn't about me, but I will admit there are times that I honestly wish it was in me to go fuck it, but it's not. You know,
Carlo, did I
but
answer your question, man?
yeah,
You did, and I think in there you also said something very powerful that a lot of philosophers
yeah,
and Stoic philosophers have said is that you can't control people's perception of you, but you can control how you react. And that gives you the power and not them the power because the people that
yeah,
try to put you down or try to do all these things to make you not be on your track, they want to see you explode and fail and blow up publicly. But when you get right back on track, it bothers them more because you're pushing yourself forward. And at the end of the day, the only thing that you have to prove is to yourself is that you can keep going. And I think a lot of people get lost in translation on that. But what you said perfectly nails that
yeah.
is that it's all about you and how you move forward and how you control your reactions and emotions.
Yeah.
So there you go, Steve. So now we have producer, actor, author, stoic philosopher, right there.
I'll add that
Yeah.
to raconteur, which somebody called me not so long ago. I'm like, people are calling me so many things, I have to look them up. I'm like, what the fuck is a raconteur? Okay, it's weird, man. I think people are seeing a different side of me.
Yeah,
I think people, and I think they're welcoming it. I don't want to say that, but I think that the people who have read the book, I don't want to say that they have more respect for me, even though some of them have said that. But I don't know. It's so weird, dude. It's such a weird feeling.
well, I think it's because like especially those that you when you were doing the horror circuits and stuff years ago when you were with again we're gonna talk about this a little bit Tony Todd and those guys and you were one of the big tall bald guys that I forget what you called that they called that group
Yeah, the terror.
but because they only see that side of you so the book is letting them see the you know what got Steve to that point and
Well,
because I gotta say your child even though you said to you your childhood seemed normal it was the farthest thing from okay.
as absurd as it all sounds, and I know, man, I know how absurd a lot of it must seem, but all that shit happened, you
Yeah.
know? All that shit happened. Some things you just get so absurd that you can't make it up. And that was my whole life. It's like every 2 seconds there was just something else. And it's horrifying. Another thing I'm glad you brought up Tony Todd, because he was a good friend and I'm gonna miss him. And I think everyone's gonna miss him because he was so funny and he had this great laugh and he was just such a genuine person. But a lot of times, I'm very lucky in that respect to have worked with a lot of the people I grew up watching in theaters and on TV and to really get to know them. And I only wish sometimes that other people could get to see these wonderful sides of these people. And with the book, when I was up to the part where I was talking about my interactions and all the crazy shit that was going on, I wanted to try and give people a little bit of insight into who these people were, especially George Romero and Sid Haig, who were my mentors. I wanted people to get to know them even a little bit as well as I did, you know, and to realize how funny and genuine and wonderful they actually were, aside from the movies they directed or the characters they've created. And I hope I was at least somewhat successful in doing that because the last half of the book was very much about trying to share that and share the message that celebrity is a manufactured word, man. We're all just people, you know? Some people have cooler jobs than others, some people have shittier jobs than others. But at the end of the day, we're all just people, you
Yep.
know? And that was one of the things I really wanted to try to get across, you know?
Yep. I will
I
say that
think
as I read it, my thought was, I really wish I could have hung out with those people. I really wish I could have met Sid Haig. I really wish I could have met, Tony Todd.
Yeah, they
You know,
were what makes people like them truly special is they don't buy into or realize how much of a legend they truly were. And legend not just because they were talented, but legend because of who they actually were and how big their heart was and how the strength of their character, I wouldn't, if not for George and Sid, I wouldn't have had the guts to walk away from Dread Central. I wouldn't have had the guts to do fucking half the shit I did in the industry. I was very lucky to always be able to call them in for advice or just call to bullshit, you know? And that was one of the most wonderful things was just we knew each other personally. So we talked about things that had nothing to do with the industry.
yeah.
And that's how we really formed a bond. And, there are a lot of people. I mean, there was one guy from a competing website. I ain't going to say which one, but he said to me, he's like, every time I do an event or every time I go someplace, I always see pictures of you with all these people or in these room parties that I didn't even know were happening. They're like, how do you get into there? And you do that by just treating people like people.
Yeah.
I never treat anyone like they're a celebrity. I don't give a fuck. I truly don't. Once I met George Romero, that was it. I
Yeah.
was like, well, fuck it. No one's intimidating me anymore, and no one
Yeah.
has. And
I'm the same way. I just like, and I do appreciate too that like from the stories you told and from meeting you, like when I first interviewed you, you had just, it was in the Terrifier thing, Terrifier 2. And you were genuinely, we had a good conversation. We were having fun.
mhm.
You weren't up there doing I'm the producer, I'm up here. Let's just get this press thing over with, whatever. We actually, so at no point did I feel like you thought you were better than me or different than me.
I mean that there's a vast difference between what some people. Once you start thinking about this whole thing, once you start thinking it's about you, you
Yeah.
lose sight of why you're doing it. When I'm at a convention or I'm doing a panel or I'm at a signing or whatever the case may be, when it's over, I go hang out where everyone else is hanging. I don't. Once in a while, I'll go to the room party, but I'll always come back down because where I'm most comfortable, where I'm most at home, is with the people who love the same shit that I do. I don't want to call them fans. I call
Right.
them peers.
Yeah.
I'm the first one to go to the bar and hang out with anybody. And I think it kind of weirds people out sometimes how accessible I am. And I don't know why, because I will never, ever in a million years ever think of myself other than some poor schmuck who's worked his ass off just like everyone else. I don't do ego. I don't buy
Right.
into ego. Sometimes people have had to twist my arm to take credit for things that I did. And I don't do it for credit. I don't do it for recognition. I don't do it for ego, fame, money, all of that. I do it because I love it. And I think to circle back a little bit on Carlo's question, I think that's why, despite whomever is in that position of power or whomever isn't, people still treat me the same way they always have. And that's always very respectfully because that's how I treat them.
Right. I will say I remember from our first interview, you weren't doing the show circuit. You weren't doing the convention stuff. In fact, and what's funny is I didn't know you from Dread Central. I didn't know about that side of your background that you'd actually been heavily involved in all that stuff before. And I'm going, oh, you need to go out there and do this because I think it'll be really cool. I was just thinking about it because it was cool to talk to you, and you are so down to earth that people would want to talk to the producer of Terrifier 2 because, you know, I didn't even know about, honest to God, I didn't know about that other stuff. So,
That's okay.
and even if I didn't, I wouldn't have cared. I'm like, you know,
Yeah. I
it's
mean,
cool,
that's 100% fine.
yeah.
again, I don't buy into the celebrity thing.
Right.
I truly don't. I don't care. I will I when to me, if I'm at a convention and somebody's signing and I'm signing next to them, number one, my mind is blown.
Yeah.
And number two, I'm going to make sure that every single person who comes up to my table is going to get my undivided attention
Right.
and leave with a smile. Because one of the things George and Sid both taught me was that you never know when you're ever going to see these people again. So why not give them a good experience, you know? And that's me. I don't close my table until I'm positive everyone has gotten everything that they wanted, and I'll be the first one in and the last one out, just because if not for the people who come up to me and hang out with me and laugh with me, they're the ones I have a life because of.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's very humbling in that respect to me, because I don't exist the way I do without the people who I refer to as my peers.
Yep.
It's
My
very special to me.
my roommate has a story that he likes to tell from a convention he went to a long time ago, and I don't remember which actress it was, but he was down in the hotel eating breakfast, and she walked up and said, "Can I join you?" For no apparent reason. She just wanted to talk to a person as a person, not sitting at her table going, "Okay, I got to sign the picture. Got to here's the picture. Okay, next." She.
It's very trying, man. But you know what? When you look at what else you could be doing,
Yeah.
like you could be flipping burgers, man. You could be stocking shelves. You're sitting there while people come up to you and just tell you how much they appreciate what you've done. How could that even remotely put you in a bad mood? You know?
Yep. And then your response, and then because you don't know if they're having a bad day, because I've done that before. I've gone up to somebody at a because I needed to
Mhm.
get something or something, and their just willingness to talk to you for a few minutes brightens your day, And so, yeah,
It's all about
yeah,
humanity, man. When I did an interview maybe a couple months ago, and somebody looked at the stuff that's behind me, and they're like, "Well, what's your favorite thing to collect?" I thought about it, because I have a good deal of stuff, but at the end of the day, I'm also very cognizant of the fact that it is just stuff.
yeah,
People, you can lose it, you can keep it. It's just stuff. And that led me to the realization that my favorite thing to collect is memories with other people. This,
right,
our first conversation, any conversation I've ever had at a show, anytime I've been out in public and somebody recognizes me. Those are my favorite things to collect, man, because that's the only thing that you don't lose unless you lose this as you
right,
get older. And that I would hate to do that. But I you also have no say over that shit either.
yeah.
But right now, all I can remember and I'm cognizant and lucid, my favorite thing to collect is memories.
And the nice thing for you is since you have this book, that if some of this does go, you can go back and hey, I've
I ain't reading that
yeah.
shit ever again, to be honest with you. That's why
Well,
I'm that's why I'm not the one recording the audiobook. A lot of
uh,
people have asked me the audiobook, why aren't you reading it? And the answer is really simple. Number one, I'm lucky enough to have Mark Redfield, who's an incredible actor, not just narrating the book, but performing the book. He read it and he's like, Steve, I can't just narrate this. I want to perform it. And I told him, well, go ahead, man, go crazy. And not only do I have that, but it's the simple fact that when I opened those doors to write out whatever it is I wrote out,
yeah,
that was me shutting them too. And I
yeah,
don't want to go back and reopen them. So I don't want to read that shit. If anyone ever asked me to do a reading, I'm not doing a reading. I'm just going to tell people shit that I didn't put in the book. I'm going to
right,
give
yeah,
people B-sides and hidden tracks and shit.
yeah,
I don't, I don't, I don't want to open those doors again. A lot of that stuff, as much as it fills me with joy and it's very much made me, all that stuff has made me who I am now and I like me, but
yeah,
I don't want to ever have to go there again. That's why I got into the detail that
yeah.
I did. I tried really hard to get it all out. it's still in here,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Right.
at least now it's somewhere else.
Yeah.
Even though it's still lingering, there's like echoes,
Yep.
right? But now it's somewhere else and it's not in me anymore. And that's why I won't read the audiobook. I'll listen to it.
Yeah.
I'll think it's funny as hell to see somebody perform what the fuck I said. I do
Yeah.
appear in the book. I
Yeah.
do an introduction. I do the thank yous at the end, but I don't, I can't bring myself to actually
Yeah.
read that again or write that again. And I don't think I should have to. I think what I did is good enough.
Okay, so I want to touch on a couple of spots where the people might be interested to see your side of things because you were there.
Sure.
And aside from the whacked out family stuff, our family has always joked that we should be on Jerry Springer. I think you're way beyond that. Your
Oh,
family,
yep. There
yeah.
is that.
You're more of a Phil Donahue type, Yeah,
Dude, I don't know what the fuck I am, to be honest with you. You know what it is? I'm a case study in
yeah,
being an idiot who's learned to live
yep,
with every conceivable adversity that there is,
yeah,
that could possibly be. And I'm stubborn because I don't like to
yeah.
lose. I don't like to give up. And
I said before we started recording, and I'm going to put this on note that given your what you wrote, you could have went one or two ways, and that was either what you're doing now or a serial killer.
yeah,
There's nothing in between. There is.
there really is. I could have very much, and I was on that road for in my teens and in my early 20s, where I was just going to be a product of my environment. And, when I lost my mom, which I talk about in the book, one day after my dad had died too, I had the realization that I was an orphan now, right? And I never really got along with my dad, even though I forgave him for a lot of the shit that he had done. But once I was left alone in this world, without the comfort of somebody you could say is a parent, it dawned on me that, well, what did my mom ever ask me to do for her? What did she ever really put on me? And the only thing my mom ever asked me to do was to try to be somebody that she could respect and be proud of. So that's a big reason why I chose the path that I'm on now. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I don't do drugs. I'll do it. I will do some things socially, but never to the point where I'm inhibited and I'm not in control of my actions because honestly, I don't want to know how much of that recessive gene I have, you know?
Right.
So I keep all the things that people consider recreational at arm's length, But, I did become addicted to something. I became addicted to food. I'm a stress eater. I was close to 400 pounds at one point in my life and I could barely walk and it was terrible. And then I realized I was killing myself. I looked in the mirror one day and I said, dude, you're killing yourself. You're a coward. Stop it. And I stopped. And I'm still here. And
Yeah.
now I want to be here for a while too, because I'm married. I have kids out of nowhere. I have grandkids. I don't know how the fuck that happened. It was like add water. All of a sudden, I had this huge family, and I've never had a family. It
I
was always
think you alluded to in the book that you never intended to have a family.
no, dude. I was really careful where I shot my loads. I didn't
Because
want no
I mean,
kids.
given because of your parents and the relative who lived upstairs, your aunt or whatever,
Yeah, and who I think about that, and I love my kids now because they don't have any of me, so I don't have to worry about it. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
I don't want to know what kind of little psychopath I would have shot out of my nuts. I don't want to know that. That's not something I've ever wanted to revisit. I like to think I probably would have been a good dad. I try to be a good stepdad. I don't
Yeah,
know the first thing about being a dad beyond looking at my father and realizing how not to be.
right.
And that's how I like if I'm faced with a situation dealing with fatherhood or some shit like that, I'm always like, what would my father not have done? And then do it,
Now, that brings up a question though, because now So have you ever caught yourself in the middle of, oh shit, I sound like my dad. I need to pull back.
I sounded like my dad. I sound like my mom. My mom was more the loving optimist. I I cannot tell you the amount of work I put in to never sound like my dad.
That's good because not everybody escapes that trap. Where
That
because
wasn't, it's not easy. It wasn't
because
easy.
like you said, growing up, you thought that was normal. You thought everybody's family was as wacky as yours. Yeah.
I would go to my friends' houses, man, and sorry, I get a little, but I would go to my friends' houses, and it would be completely different. Nobody's yelling at each other. Nobody's getting their ass kicked. And at like 14, I started realizing, what the fuck am I dealing with here? You know? And that's where my anger issues really started blossoming because I was once I became old enough to realize that the shit I was going through was wrong and I started hitting back, I became a very angry person. And luckily, I did enough crazy shit in my youth that by the time I hit like 18, 19, 20, people in my neighborhood had already seen me be completely psychopathic and they just left me alone. You know what I mean? They just,
Yeah.
there's Steve, just leave him be.
Just
And that was
avoid
great,
Steve. Yeah.
and that I was fine with that because you don't want to knock on a stranger's door. And I was pretty strange.
And then so there's that, and I'm telling you, people, you need to read the book because the story he tells about his relatives, they are a interesting group. Let me just
But they're funny though, right?
yeah, they are. They're
What the
yeah,
fuck is
yeah,
wrong with you
yeah,
people?
you can't help but go, oh, this is sick, but it's funny as hell,
I'm
So
glad you said
so
that.
that brings me to a question, and it's kind of like serious, but it may not be so serious. It depends how you interpret it. So you had, you know, a different type of upbringing that was completely psychotic and chaotic in some senses. Do
Mhm.
you think that's what led you to your love of horror?
That's a great question. And it's really kind of answered in the first chapter of the book.
I was going to say, do you want to tell that story?
I'll leave that. That's actually online at fangoria.com. But I think I realized at a very early age that monsters were real, but they weren't necessarily the ones you've seen on TV. The ones I've seen on TV, if anything, are related to them. I mean, look at the Frankenstein monster. He didn't ask to be here. Once he is here, his dad didn't show him how to live. So how could I not relate to that and have that particular creature's struggle resonate with me? And being that my mom worked from 3 o'clock until 11 o'clock at night at Brooklyn Hospital, my drunken father, I ended up spending most of my life with, because he would come home at 4 o'clock. So I was really only alone for like an hour ish a day, but even then, my brother would be around or whatever. And, I was never raised. My mom wasn't there to raise me because they couldn't afford me. My dad was too drunk to raise me. So what I would do was once I had my first experience with horror movies, I realized something that was cool. I found the first thing that I enjoyed, and that was the fact that I could be 100% frightened and still absolutely safe. And I just thought that was the coolest thing. And so I started seeking out all types of different horror movies, from Texas Chainsaw Massacre to Martin to fucking you name it. If I could get my hands on it, I consumed it. But what I did realize, what the movies that really started to resonate with me were the ones directed by George Romero. Because in George's movies, a lot of the time, it wasn't necessarily the big bad that was the problem. It was the people. And I've come to realize that people, we're usually the problem, right?
Mhm.
So I learned my moral compass from things like Dawn of the Dead and Martin. These were the things that raised me. And I even told George when I finally got to meet him that first time, he raised me without ever knowing he did. He's literally where I learned right and wrong from, his movies. And I think that horror movies resonate with me so much. And I really believe that it's because you could have the scariest monster in the world, but people so much more frightening. And people can be absolutely evil At least
Yep.
monsters have an excuse. And I think that once I started seeing monsters getting slain or dealt with, I was like, wow, I guess I would try to apply that to the shit that was happening. I mean, don't get me wrong. I wasn't thinking about going to stake a vampire, but I was thinking of how can I apply some of the knowledge or stuff that they had done in these movies to real life because that's
Yeah.
all I had, you know? And yeah, I learned a lot of life lessons just from watching George Romero's movies, from watching things like Jaws and just these old kitschy horror movies, man. And it was always nice for me to see monsters get vanquished because my monster was very much alive and snoring his ass off in the next room.
You know what got me there is just like with Miro is there's always that one asshole in the movie that and so you hope you know the monster's going to get his, but you hope he really gives it to this guy before he gets his. You know,
Mhm.
yeah,
You know,
Absolutely.
there's some interesting stuff there because I have a friend that I've grown up with, and he's got Asperger's, and he really loves horror movies. And when we were younger, he would always watch like the Jasons, the Freddy Kruegers, and the Michael Myers. And in his old room, his dad was a projectionist. So he got all the movie posters and all these really cool things. And his dad operated the old nitrate films as well. So they had a lot of cool stuff. And my friend, I asked him one time because I was always scared of horror movies. Like I had nightmares just from Chucky, right?
Mhm.
And I said to him, I said, why do you insist on liking Jason? Why do you have some type of attachment to Michael Myers? And he said to me, he says, well, with Jason, I feel completely safe because he doesn't hurt kids. He only hurts teenagers. I was like, that is very interesting. That like I
mm,
that never clicked with me. See, I'm the opposite. I've seen, and I can relate to you in some extent with the crazy childhood, and Paul knows exactly what I'm elaborating to. I've seen like real violent stuff in my childhood, and I've always been adverse to like horror movies and gore because it triggers like this memory of me seeing like actual stuff very similar to that. However, I feel perfectly safe with realistic gangster films like Goodfellas and things like that. So I have a similar chaotic childhood in some senses, but I felt safer with the human monsters versus the imaginatory gory monsters, if that makes sense. So
It
I
makes
find that interesting.
it makes perfect sense. And I
Yeah.
love me some mob movies. Mob movies are like they're chicken soup for my soul because I grew up in Brooklyn and I knew people like them. I think you know what it is? Maybe I think maybe fear is relative, you know? You can be scared of a bunch of different things, whether it be monsters or it could be human. And it's always going to be what gets you. You know what I
yeah,
mean? And one is no more important than the other. But I think also another reason why I think horror movies in particular resonated with me, the same reason that gangster movies resonate with people, is like they always have a character in their movies that is the relatable, rational, the one that you want to see get through whatever chaotic situation that they're in. And I think it's a lot to do with that too, because I
mm,
didn't know I was a victim. Apparently I was. And characters like Lorraine Bracco's character in Goodfellas, she was the victim. And to see how the victims can overcome their demons, be them human or supernatural, I think that alone resonates. It's the same, it's the same chessboard, but just different pieces.
yep. And I know this isn't really but I wanted to draw too that for you're talking about sometimes the monsters are the humans or the ones that to me that's why I'm a Stephen King fan. That's why he resonates with me. His stories are about the people in his stories, and you watch the different archetypes, and you go, okay, that guy's an asshole. I don't care about the alien or whatever the hell this is. That guy needs to.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I recognize when I watch stuff like that.
Sure.
The only movie that's ever scared me, and I was a young kid at the time when I saw it, I was probably 4 or 5. Seriously, Frankenstein.
Really?
For first time I saw Frankenstein, I
See,
had a night.
I was
I
never not a single time scared of
Yeah,
Frankenstein,
I
but
had
that's
an.
I think
Again, I was 4 or 5, so But I had a nightmare. It's the only time I've ever had a nightmare that was brought on by a horror movie. After that, no, I've been a fan ever since, man. Frankenstein is a movie I watch every year. Frankenstein and Bride, they go together. They're you don't watch one without the other.
mhm.
It's
They're two masterpiece films. They really are.
yeah.
Frankenstein next to Night of the Living Dead is my favorite movie. And my third favorite movie is actually Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein.
Which is a hilarious movie.
That is the quintessential perfect horror comedy, in my
And
opinion.
the fact that they got the actual monsters, the
Yeah.
actors to come back and do those
What
bits.
makes that movie work is the humor never comes from the monsters. The monsters are never the butt of the joke.
Right.
It comes from Abbott, Costello, and their situation. And that to me is the recipe for a successful blending of the genres. Yeah, man, like I said, it's all the same chessboard. It's
Yep.
just different pieces. And
Yep.
we all react to things differently.
So when you talk about Abbott and Costello meets Frankenstein, I've never seen it, but now I want to watch it because if you both like it, I know it's got to at least be funny.
It's
And
it's
Oh,
the only movie I can literally quote from beginning to end.
that's our next interview. We'll
It,
just do a live reading
it
of
is it is absolutely 110% my chicken soup. When
Yeah.
shit is going sideways, I have Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. I have it on my iPad. I have it on my iPhone. I have it on Blu-ray. I have it on DVD. I have every conceivable way I could possibly watch that movie just because I know that that's the movie that heals me, that takes me away, that makes me laugh, that, and it's just because the monsters are so scary for their time. And it's just like an all-star. It's like watching, to me, it's like watching an all-star team compete in the
Right.
Olympics. It's the all-star team of comedy and horror in that
Yeah.
movie. So yeah, man, that
Yeah.
movie is
It's a great
incredible.
blend. They did a great job with that. So
so
let's see. Oh, go
one
ahead.
of I was just gonna say one of my comfort movies, and this piggybacks off that, and maybe you guys might laugh at this, right? Because now a lot of people like this growing up from Gen X and '80s time was I love Monster Squad. Like
Oh, fuck
I
yeah.
love that movie, and you know why, right? Because the monsters lose, but Frankenstein was a nice guy, and it just made me feel like there's hope in humanity when you see these kids come together to fight something so much bigger than themselves. Even if the adults thought it was all a joke in the beginning, like, oh yeah, right, this is crazy. There's no wolf man, the guy howling in the telephone booth and whatnot. But hey, like it just makes you have hope for humanity. Like, wow, these if these kids can do it and they can get through this horrible situation,
But it works on the same exact level that Abbott and Costello does.
Yeah.
That movie doesn't. I love the Monster Squad. It's one of my favorites. But that movie doesn't exist without Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein first. You know,
Yep.
that was the blueprint for all of it. And again, the reason why Monster Squad works the same way is because the monsters are scary. The humor doesn't come from them. It comes from the situations and it comes from the kids. And that is the same exact plateau that Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein treads. You have Wolfman, you have Dracula,
Yep.
you have Frankenstein's monster, you have the mad scientist, you have everything. So yeah, it's just now I want to watch it again, probably to my wife's chagrin because she's seen me watch it, or at least have put up with it like 100,000 times. But I'm glad that I finally found a person that loves horror movies as much as we do, and I do, I should say.
Yep.
So it's funny too because some people have my Fandango at home password, and every time they see Abbott and Costello and continue watch, they're like, "Oh, Steve must be going through some shit." It's like a weird telltale sign to people.
So outside of the horror, because I do want to touch on some of the other key parts of the book that I think people might find interesting.
Sure.
Whereas at 6:30 in the morning on September 11th, I was getting ready for work. You were in the middle of that shit.
Yeah. That was a really hard chapter for me to write. Honestly, I had never seen or read an account of that day from somebody who was directly involved and lived to tell the tale.
That's why I wanted to bring it up because yours
So,
is the first time I saw. Okay,
yeah,
this is
I mean,
somebody I've spoken to that was in the middle of all that
you
shit.
would think that of that entire cataclysmic event, that so many more, there would be hundreds of stories, and there are, I'm sure, but I never once saw one that tackled what it was like to be in that chaos. And that's the story I tried to tell. Whether I'm a good enough writer to do that is debatable, but it was an event that forever changed me. I was diagnosed with PTSD on top of everything else that was going on in here. It's something I went to therapy for. It was something that really fucked with me, man, because I can see people falling. I can hear their bodies hitting, you know. I know the sound of the plane hitting those buildings. I was there, you know. And I especially remember the aftermath when I was looking for my friend. You go into the city, and New York City proper, Manhattan, was like a tomb during that entire event. You get off the Canal Street station, you walk to Lower Manhattan, and the first thing you see is millions, or it seems like millions of missing posters, and it takes a toll, man, just because you feel all that sadness, and the sadness was palpable. It was like it was just nothing that I've ever seen. But what I do take a lot of comfort from that day was it brought out the best in everyone, even in the most heinous of situations. It brought out the best in everybody. Everybody that day was just trying to go home, trying to get back to the people they loved. I mean, what a lot of people don't realize is when that tower came down, there goes all the cell service. You couldn't call anyone, you know. There was no way to get in touch with people for the most part. Cell phones weren't as big of a thing as they are now. I mean, yes, they existed back then, but it wasn't like everyone had a cell phone like we do now. It was a hard day.
Right.
You
And because you talk about you had to work your way home and,
Yeah,
they hadn't seen you, they didn't know.
it
And
took
you talk
me
about,
it took me about 4 hours to walk home from Manhattan, and I'm crossing the Williamsburg Bridge, and everybody's like, "Oh, there's a bomb on the bridge." We all start running, and in your
yeah,
head, you're saying goodbye to everybody because you don't know, you know. And you get to the end of that bridge, and there was this little bodega, and the guy was just handing out any type of drink he could to anybody, and nobody was getting charged, and nobody cared. It didn't matter what you were that day. It didn't matter your race, your creed, your color, your political position. None of that shit mattered. All that mattered is we helped each other get home. And that was, I wish I could see that side of humanity again without,
without
without
the cause, basically. Yeah, without the cause. You want to see the effect, but you don't want to see what it takes to bring it on. Yeah.
totally. Because there was a lot of beauty in all that ghastliness,
Yeah.
It really, and that's what made me realize too, man, that gave me a lot of my disposition. I mean, I grew up in a very mixed neighborhood, so I never really gave a shit about the differences between people. But that day proved to me more than anything that we're all just people. Doesn't matter your color. It doesn't matter. To this day, I'm a firm believer that there's only two types of people, and it's not men or women. It's assholes and those who aren't.
Yeah.
That you don't, just because you're of a certain ethnicity doesn't make you any better or any worse than anyone. Just because you have a sexual preference, or you have a different set of ideals, it just makes you different, and we should celebrate each other's differences instead of
Yep.
letting them tear us apart.
Yep. Or just like, just because you're raised with more money or you have more money doesn't make you better than the guy who's serving you breakfast at Denny's.
Yeah, not even a little bit. you
No.
know Matter of fact, I never understood people who fuck with servers. I mean, these are the people that handle your food, man.
Well,
You want to be extra nice to them.
that's what I always say. That's what I always say, man. Do not mess with the people who touch your food, man. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
you should be the first person you're smiling at.
Yep. So so yeah, and that's a big part of the book that I hope people draw to because that really got me. I mean,
Yeah,
it,
my family is my dad's family. They're all in Red Hook, the ones that are in America and not in Italy. And I remember after the whole thing with the towers, and I saw it on TV, and my work called me and said there's no work today, and I thought they were joking. Like, I was like, no way, this didn't happen in America. And the next few days, when I talked to my aunt in the Red Hook, she was telling me that the debris from those towers was all over the city, and people's belongings and paperwork, like they were flying into her yard from the debris in Red Hook. So I can only imagine, you know,
I actually address all of that in the book.
yeah,
The only way I think I described it in the book is it was literally raining paper,
yep.
documents from everywhere, and belongings and rubble and strangers huddling with each other, holding on for dear life. It's a very powerful day, man. And again, I didn't, I've at least speaking for myself, not that I've gone looking for it because I avoid 9/11 like nobody's business because I don't watch TV. I don't listen to the radio. I don't do any of that. I'm very controlled in what I'm taking into my head that day. But I'd never seen anyone give their account who was there in the thick of it and
yeah,
managed to get home.
yeah.
And that,
Not like you did. Not like you did. That's what I'm. That's what I was saying. That's why to me that's a very important part of the book to let because to me it still seems very surreal because like I said I was only watching it on TV. In fact, I woke up and I used to have my cable box set to turn on and wake me up to get me up and going. And I saw what I saw and I thought I was watching a movie. Seriously, I thought I was I thought okay this
one
is
thing I learned, and this is going to sound funny, and this is just my gallows humor coming together again. Shit has hit the fan when you see McDonald's closing up. Truth, dude.
well
If
that's
McDonald's is shuttering their doors,
yeah.
something bad has happened. But you
Yeah,
know what? I got to
down in
give
the South, it's Waffle House. The rules
yeah,
are, they're in the storm. It's Waffle
I
House.
got to I got to give McDonald's a lot of credit. Honestly, I really do. Yes, it's shit food, and we all know that. But when everybody was volunteering and going through the debris, they gave out so much food and they didn't ask for anything.
Yeah,
You know? They were just, I mean, I would see just carloads of truckloads in some cases of people just coming out with huge, massive trays of McDonald's to feed the people who are either there looking for their loved one or especially the volunteers. Everybody was just as important as everybody
yeah,
else. And it was like I said, when like I got to that little bodega and the guy was just giving away anything he could to anybody who needed it. It was
yeah.
amazing. It was a really amazing thing to see. And to this day, every time I go into Manhattan, I can't really be there. You know,
Yeah, you mentioned that in the book too, that you're not comfortable going into the city
I'm
still.
really not. I don't like it. It's not that it triggers me. It's just that I'm empathic, and even though we're so many years removed, when I go into the city, that sadness is still there for me. So it just hits me like a punch to the jaw.
Yeah,
So I try to make my way in and out of Manhattan as quickly as possible, as efficiently as possible, as soon as I can. And I just, that's part of the reason why I left New York was 9/11. I had to get out of there, man, because it was literally killing me. My blood pressure was through the roof. I was, there are still times like if I'm with my wife and we're out and I hear a plane, I'll grab her hand, just to know that I'm not alone. It's something that's really scarred me. And that's the book sounds like such a bummer. I swear to God, it's not. You know,
but that's the thing. It's not. It's a to me. It's a book that yeah, like I said at the beginning. Yeah, there's all that dark stuff, but in the midst of all that dark stuff, you sprinkle in okay, here's what was going through my head, and all of a sudden this happened, and and it's the this happened that makes you go, really? They really right then and there that happened? Yeah.
I mean, and you would think that it would stop, but it never did. You know,
Yeah.
and it's just my life has always been one thing after the other, and I'm not complaining about it because it's my life. You
Right.
know, I call the I call the book an American memoir for the completely dysfunctional because that's exactly what the fuck it is.
Yeah,
You
it
know,
really is. Yeah.
dysfunction was my normal, you know, and I don't know. I guess I'm really good at being dysfunctional, man.
Yep. So we get through that, and then you start to talk a little bit about your years involved with Red Central and doing the horror scene. Are you now? You said earlier that you, if you have to speak on it, you're going to give a B side. Can we get a B side Sid or a B side Tony Todd story? That's not in the book, maybe. I'm going to
Yes,
put you on the spot. I'm going to put you on the
yes,
spot.
yes. It's not even my story to tell. It's Adam Green's story, but I was there for it. So it's just so insanely funny to me, but it's a good insight to Tony's process. In Hatchet 2, Tony played Reverend Zombie, you know, and my scene with him was the one with all the hunters while Tony's trying to tell people to, come with him into the woods to take out Victor Crowley once and for all. And of course, we all just get up and leave. But at one point during the takes, or even before, I don't remember the exact time because I was overly stimulated. But Tony walks up to Adam and goes, Adam, I have a question. Adam's like, what's up, Tony? He goes, and pardon the poor Tony Todd impresario. No one can speak like Tony. Maybe Keith David a little bit, but Tony just had that amazing voice. He's like, my character, Reverend, does he have powers? Supernatural. And Adam's looking at him. He's like, no, he doesn't. It's okay. Can I pretend that he thinks he has powers? Adam said, absolutely. So that's part of the reason why that character is so gloriously over the top, But it just goes to show you his process was that of going into a role and not just speaking the word on the page, but just getting in that character's psyche. And I think that's what all good actors do, you know. They don't just they're not about just reciting the written word. They're about finding who this character is.
Yeah, I like that because that to me that tells me he was trying to find a reason that this guy would be so over the top. Give
Exactly.
me.
So that is without question my favorite Tony Todd story.
That's awesome.
And I have many, but that one is one I will just never forget because it was, and I think part of it was the look on Adam Green's face when he was asked it that made me laugh so hard. Because Adam was like, wow, you're from outer space, man. But, Adam and Tony had a very special relationship. And yeah, man, it was a huge loss for a lot of us. Because what a lot of people don't realize about the horror genre is the circle is very, very small. It doesn't seem small because all these movies are being made, but the core group is very small, you know. And
When I
I
was
want to
reading the book, that's what it looked like to me. It looked like okay, this is a
but that
this
that's
is
how
a
that's
yeah,
exactly how I wanted it to seem because a lot of people don't realize that. A lot of people don't have the access that I did, you
right.
know, and that I do. So I wanted to bring people into that world in a way that they had never been before. And at that point, I was consciously writing the book. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like before, this was just my memories, but now, being that I picked it up and was starting again, and I got to that point where I'm trying to figure out, right, what stories could I share? And there are so many industry stories, but I'm like, you know what? I think maybe the human stories would be a lot more interesting so people could see who these people were. And again, I never considered myself a writer. I don't know how well written the book is. It's
No,
gotten
it's well written. It's very well written.
the biggest compliment I've gotten is people say that it feels like you're just sitting there with me shooting the shit.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I,
it's exactly.
I lay it all out on the line from beginning to end. And it literally is as accurate as last March. So it's very up to date. And should I make another one? Should I write another one? I always joke that I'm going to call it post credit sequence.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
you know, I mean,
I,
everything about the book is very thought out. The concept of the cover, if you really look at the cover and you think about it, here's this guy, movies have changed his life, and he's sitting there in a movie theater completely by himself, chained to the seat, and screen is the title of his life story written in a ransom note. You know,
Nice. Yeah.
that's how I felt my whole life. You know, I felt captive, and I'm hoping, and to a certain extent, it has already, but I'm hoping a lot of the chains that were tying me to that chair get.
I will say, because you talk about the small community, I wish I could have been there for some of the antics that you, Sid, and Tony did. Because holy
Brother, that
crap!
was that was the tip of the iceberg. It really, there are so many stories shall remain untold just because they were so.
I could see why, based on the one you did
Yeah,
tell.
but
Yeah.
yeah, I tried to put the most entertaining and non-damaging stories.
The ones that weren't going to get the lawyers involved. Yeah, yeah,
Well, I had to be really careful of that.
yeah.
There's very few instances I didn't use people's real names, you know, and one of the main parts of the book where I didn't use people's real names are when those people were just assholes, you know,
Right.
and jerk offs and dicks. And, you know, you want to know privately who they were, I'll tell you, but I'm not going to put it on
Yeah,
blast.
but one thing you did well in the book too is you made clear when you were doing that. You were like, okay, this is this person, but this isn't their real name because, well, yeah,
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 I mean, I wanted just to say what happened, you know,
right.
and hopefully when I'm dead and gone, some of the things I've done, whether it be film or this book or whatever, will still resonate with someone somehow. You know, I'm a
Yep.
firm believer that if you tell a good enough story, then you become immortal. And I'm not
Yeah,
saying I'm going to
yeah.
be immortal by
Like
any
I
stretch
said, you
of the
did it well. I truly, I truly enjoyed it, and I will say that whatever that was, that wasn't my side.
That was me.
Oh, is that you? That now I lost my train of thought.
Fuck
Um,
the
oh,
email.
I know what I was going to say. That even though you didn't use their real names, it is such a small community that those that knew you back then or know you are going
Oh,
to go, oh, that's that guy. Yeah, yeah, that's
people who deserve to be put on blast, they're very much on blast.
yeah.
You know,
And then the last couple of chapters of the book deal with the reason you and I met originally was the Dread Central thing, Terrifier leading into Terrifier 2,
fucking
and then it wraps up with basically it's almost like you said it's like it stops at that point and then now the next book would go further into what's happened since
a
then,
lot of
you know.
a lot of people have asked me, and a lot of people still don't even realize that I had nothing to do with Terrifier.
Yeah,
And the reasons for that are in the book. They're not, it's not a hit piece on
no,
anyone,
not at all.
you know, but it does tell exactly what happened to the best of my ability. And again, I don't, what happened to me, while unfortunate, it's not important. What's important is that the success of the Terrifier franchise, which I had everything to do with, okay? And I'm not saying that to sound like a douchebag.
Right.
It's just a fact. The success of that franchise and where it's gone and the records it's gone on to break and all that stuff, that's what's important. That's what's important for the genre. And next to my family, I love the horror genre more than anything. And I would never do or say anything about anyone that would hurt either a franchise or them personally in any way. You know, I don't want people to read it and take sides. I don't want people to listen to this and then go back and only read that chapter just to find out what
Right.
happened. Because I don't think you'd be able to appreciate what happened unless you've
Yeah.
taken that whole ride with me. Unless
And
you
that personally, that's why I made sure to point out certain key parts of the book that I
yeah,
think are very interesting.
yeah, and thank you for that. And it's listen, sometimes your true Hollywood story is only as happy as you let it be.
Yeah.
You know, the worst shit in the world could happen to you, and that's okay. But that doesn't mean something great isn't going to happen to you down the road. And I think I left the book in not a bad place. I think I
No.
left in a very positive place. And I gotta tell you, there's so much of a part of me that it feels like such a relief that I don't have to be quiet about this anymore.
Right.
You know, that
Yeah.
my side of the stories or whatever you want to call it is just out there and it's a matter of public record. And there is nothing anyone could come back to me and say, well, that didn't happen like that. You're being, no, I have
Right.
every shred of proof I could ever possibly need about anything that I talked about in that book.
Yeah. I do like the fact that your attitude is, I think that even though you weren't involved with T3 for the reasons that you weren't, which were not good reasons at all, you were treated like shit. Let's be honest. But you can still look at it and go, hey, I may not get credit for that, but that's happened in large part because of me, and I'm proud of the product they come up with. Yeah.
100%. You know, I don't, I don't whine.
Yeah.
I'm not a whiner. I'm not a poor me kind of guy, dude. I'm a fuck it. Let's just deal with what happens and move on. You know, that's all you can do. I learned a lot in the fact that I realized that you could either let the past haunt you or you could just let it just stay in the past. You know,
Yeah.
the past has no bearing on right now. You may have learned from it. I don't believe in mistakes. I believe a mistake is only a mistake if you didn't learn from the situation. And
Yeah.
I have learned from every situation. I've been both lucky and unlucky enough to have to navigate, you know? And so I consider it successful. I think success for me is knowing at night when I go to bed, if I could put my head on a pillow and say to myself, did I do everything today the best that I could? What did I fuck up? How can I fix it? You know? And if I could come up and have that conversation with myself that it allows me to fall asleep, then I was successful that day. And I may not be monetarily wealthy, even though I probably should be. And had I been more of an ass kisser my whole career, I probably would be. But that's not me. I'm not a yes guy. I'm a honest guy. And sometimes the honest guys, we have to wait for our time. But I do believe it's, you know,
And it strikes me is you're like me. You're not only an honest guy. You're a nice guy. Somebody asks you to help out to do something, you don't necessarily worry about crossing those T's and dotting those I's. Okay, you need help. I'm going to help you. You
yeah.
know, and sometimes that can come back and bite you in the ass because
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Take a big old chunk out of your ass. But
You know, I think that's the hardest part about being an honest, genuine person is that it there's this thing morally within people like us that are genuine and honest, right? Is that we always want to help other people succeed. And a lot of times when we do that, we don't necessarily see their motives because they seem like they're friendly, they seem like they genuinely want to be friends, they're charismatic, and we're blinded by that. And then once some of those people get what they want, they do this to people like us. And I'm saying that from experience because I'm just going to be honest here. I have helped create so many people in the podcast space, so many big names that you wouldn't even imagine. And one day they were just like, oh, don't need you no more. That's it. And just maybe like in your story, somebody paints you as the villain. They try to make it so you don't succeed and you just keep going and you let the haters pile up. That's all you can do.
yeah, I mean, again, they only have as much power as you give them. You know, you just
Ex-
keep moving, and above and beyond anything, you stay true to yourself. You stay true to the people that support you, and I think everything else will just have a way of working itself out. You know, I've been, you know, they talk about karma and shit like that. I'd like to address karma if I could for a second. Hey, motherfucker, I've been at this bus station a long time. Sooner or later, you better pull your ass,
yeah,
you know? And one day it'll happen, but it's not going to happen until it's ready to. And you know what? Even if it doesn't happen, what do I really have to complain about? I got to live my life as a monster in fantasy land. What's better than that?
yep, absolutely. Well, Steve, thank you for joining us today. I really have appreciated this and enjoyed this a little bit of more of the insight. And like I've said numerous times, if you're interested at all in Steve or in his story, even if you're not, this book is a great look at somebody's life who like is a very dysfunctional family. I mean,
I can't wait to hear what my brother thinks.
oh dear God, I'd like to be on the fly on the wall for that one. Yeah,
I'm sure you won't have to be
yeah.
that big of a fly. His mouth is pretty big.
Well,
And I know I'm going to get an earful, but
I think there might be some earfuls from some of the other people that are mentioned in the book too, if
I'm
they don't know what's
sure
coming.
that
So,
feelings are going to be hurt and a
yep.
lot of people are going to be upset. But you know what? You did that, not me.
I
I
was
did.
gonna say, and like I alluded to it, sometimes bringing light to the darkness is a good thing because things may change because of that. Hell,
Mhm.
they may change because of that. They may go, oh shit, didn't realize we did that or whatever.
You know what? There's one thing that nobody could take away from me, and that's my grace.
Right.
And deal with every situation with humility and grace, no matter how fucked up, no matter how great. You got to carry yourself the way that you think you should.
Yeah.
It's very easy to be petty. It's very, and you probably should be sometimes. But, you're talking to somebody that I've, I've never taken a shortcut. And that's because I've never, ever, and I've been around, and I've never seen a shortcut that leads to anywhere that's worth being. I'm who I am because I put in the work. I'm where I am because I've tried my hardest. I'm going to get to wherever I go because that's where I want to be,
Yeah.
bad or good. I lived my life on my terms.
And that's all you can do. And
So,
oh, go ahead, Carla.
I was just gonna say, usually when we wrap up, we ask the pineapple question, which you've already been asked before. We all know that Paulo's pineapple is just put it on the side.
Stop it.
How,
No.
however, there is a new question that has emerged because Paul Paul thought at first this was the norm in New York, and then he found out it really wasn't, but he likes it anyway on Domino's Pizza, which I don't even know where he's
It's
coming with this. I know. No, no, I'm gonna ask
it's a norm
the,
in Brownsville, and Lemon will tell you that.
yeah,
So,
Why the fuck are you eating Domino's anyway?
well,
yeah.
because I live in Florida, so
Oh, there's that.
I mean, but Papa John's is a little bit better, Paul. I mean,
it has to do with availability at the time. So
Yeah. Well, some
so
pizza is better than no pizza. Look at it that way.
yeah.
Elio's, the square pizzas, remember those? Yeah.
Yeah.
So
They're in
this,
French bread pizzas, baby. Give me them.
yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
So yes or no? Would you eat mustard on pizza?
Excuse me, spicy brown mustard, jelly mustard.
What?
Yeah,
You,
one of our
you,
New York friends
you.
introduced us to that.
So in the part of Brownsville, Brooklyn, right? There's this little Italian pizza place. Just because the people in the area like spicy brown mustard, they put it on the pizza. But Paul was led to believe at first that it was a New York thing. He thought he could
It's
walk
good though.
down
No,
Little
no, stop
Italy
it.
and ask for mustard on
I
his pizza.
never said that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hey, Paul, I'm
Yeah.
going to put this in a way that
Thank you.
you can totally take to the bank. Number one, ill.
Actually, it's not that bad. It's really
Number
not that
two,
bad.
number two, you know how I said to you several times in this interview that I didn't realize that my life wasn't normal? That is not normal.
Well, then you need to talk to our
Thank
friend
you.
There's
No.
a reason why that place is little. Okay. That's because motherfuckers should. That's even more bizarre than pineapple.
I'll tell you what though. Okay,
Okay.
so if I ever make it to New York, I want you to take me to your pizza place. If I ever make it to New York,
Then we got to go to Brooklyn, baby, because
Yeah.
Ellen's is where it's
And
at.
and most of Brooklyn, outside the small little town of Brownsville, like this big, will never, ever put spicy brown mustard on pizza. And you ask a real Italian pizza place that, why are you messing on my flavor? Why are you messing with my flavor?
I have
Yeah.
never even heard of that. And I'm a fat guy. Okay. I have
Yeah.
never heard of
I don't
that.
remember what your answer was to the pineapple question though. So
I've grown to accept it. Do I think it's great? No. Do I think it's there and it's unusual? Sometimes, if I'm not in the mood for a normal cheese slice, if there's a slice of it at the pizzeria, yeah, maybe. But I would never call up and go, let me have a whole fucking pineapple pie. That's ridiculous. And I would certainly never in a million years think of putting any type of condiments on my pizza, dude. You keep your ketchup, your mayonnaise, your
I don't. I've never seen ketchup in it. I have seen hot sauce. I have seen people do hot sauce.
oh
Not
Oh
god,
man, Paul, where are you getting? Oh, Paul, come
bro.
on,
no,
man.
I didn't say I
Florida
didn't
do
say
you
I would
live
do
in?
that. I said I've seen people do that.
What part of Florida do you live in?
Jacksonville.
Okay, if you ever get to Tampa, there's a place called Brothers Pizza right outside of the main mall in Tampa Bay. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, they're not going to give you spicy brown mustard,
No, no, no.
They'll show
but
you the door if you ask for that.
But I seriously do.
into me,
I do want to get
I,
to New York though and try actual New York authentic pizza.
oh, there's nothing like it, dude. When I
I've
got
had Chicago pizza. I've had Chicago deep dish. I've had,
He likes tomato pie, tomato cakes.
pizza,
no,
it's
no, I don't.
literally tomato pie.
Yeah.
But when I got off the plane from California after not being on the East Coast for like 20
Right.
years or something, I ate that slice of pizza like a porn star, bro. I was elating. I didn't give a fuck. I hugged the server after that. Okay. And yeah, but now there's a part of me that's like, I wonder what that tastes like. And I don't like that that part is there. I
No,
really don't.
don't. Get rid of that immediately. Just talk to your local Italian pizza place and they will fix you right up real quick.
I absolutely do not have to. The thought has me horrified enough. I just can't.
It's more scary than monsters and horror movies, I'll tell you
Yeah,
that.
it really is. Fuck.
It's like something that you could make a horror movie out of, right? You put like mutated mustard on the pizza and it becomes like a monster
All
and it
right, all
eats.
right, all right, all right, all
You
right.
know what I'm saying?
Ever heard of
I,
mustard on pizza? No,
So,
no.
so now that we've totally derailed the interview,
I may
okay.
not come back for another one. That's
Did you just picture
Uh,
Paul going with you to a pizza place and he walks in
uh,
with you and he's like, "Do you have any gray
Carlo,
poupon?"
you just destroyed a 2-year friendship that I was building with Steve here. You know?
no. I'm not going to hold it against you. It is just absurd.
so,
Each their own, I guess. Right?
so,
Remember that whole thing when I was talking about earlier about we should celebrate
yeah.
differences? I'm not celebrating that difference. That's fucked up. Dude.
Well, yeah. So tell us when and where can they find your book? We haven't even talked about the title of the
I
book.
know the name of the book after all this, after 2 hours later, is called A Comedy of Tragedies. I think Paul really understands the title now.
Yeah.
It's out in bookstores everywhere and on Amazon on December 10th, and which is only a couple weeks away. And if you are in the New York, New Jersey area, I'm doing the first signing at Jay and Silent Bob's Secret Stash in Red.
That's right.
Right out.
Wow.
Yeah, that right.
First of all, congratulations for that. That's huge. That's a very big thing. Coming out, doing a book like this, and then going right. Steve,
I,
you've done it.
I don't know, dude. I half of me is terrified that absolutely nobody's gonna show up, But I'll be there. I'll fucking be there, man.
When is the sign-in dates?
It is December 13th from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. and I'm gonna be there the whole day because originally it was only gonna be to like 3, but I'm like, no, I'm staying the whole time you guys are open because if anybody's running late and they want to be there, if it's one person that can't be there until 5:59, I am staying there till that one
Man,
person gets in there.
I so bad wish I was closer because that's something I would come hang out with you all fucking
It's
day.
gonna be. I can't say it's gonna be fun because I also don't think anyone's gonna show up, but I'll be entertained.
No, but
I'll be sitting at the table reading.
Just to hang out at the shop too. It's just
Yeah, yeah. I've never been there. Kevin's a really great guy. His partner Ernie is an amazing guy, and Ernie set it up with Mike Zapsik, and I'm thrilled. I mean, check another one off the list, and I think I'm working on, and I haven't really announced this yet. There might be another signing in Forbidden Planet in New York City, which is cool because
nice.
that's like literally one of my favorite stores. But haven't dotted no I's or crossed no T's on that one. But yes, the Jay and Silent Bob signing is definitely happening.
And now you got books you can put on your table when you're doing the convention circuit too.
See, that's another thing, though. I have to pay for my books. So people that I grew up with, are like, "Yo, I'm in the book. Can I get a free one?" No,
No.
because I had to pay for the book so you could get it signed, so you could pay me back, motherfucker. I don't live an extravagant lifestyle.
Right. You want to sign, you want the book, you pay for it. Yeah.
I mean, it's not enough. You should be thanking me. I put your character now. Who the fuck could say that shit? I'm a book character. God
Yeah.
damn shit. And I know I'm going to have to put out a thing on social, and you'll laugh when you see it, Paul. Because I know I'm going to have to be like, guys, if you're my friend, if you're in the book, sorry, you're still not getting a free copy.
That's right.
Got to pay for my shit like everyone else does.
Like I saw the DM you posted yesterday about the guy asking how you wanted to be addressed for the book. And you get it's like that was
Yeah, that was actually Mark Redfield. Mark asked me, where is it? I'll read it just because I don't know if he's going to say it, but he asked me, in the spoken word credits open, do you want to be credited as Steve Uncle Creepy Barton or as Steve Barton? And I told him, Mr. Steve Uncle Creepy Barton the First, Esquire MD, a man known to perform amazing feats of strength, such as tearing a 1970s telephone book completely in half, while, but not limited to, daring you to knock a D-cell battery off of his shoulder and simultaneously basting a 22-pound turkey using only a standard baster and the power of his supple ass cheeks.
Yeah.
That is my legacy, sir. That is what I want.
I hope he does that for the audio version. I seriously do. Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me, but that is me. I don't think I've ever really given many straight answers in my life. It's always kind of colorful, I guess, and weird and funny, hopefully.
Yeah, because I mean, people who know me wouldn't know this, but like if you ask me about me, I don't like talking about it. I don't like it.
Well, you know what's intense for me about the book coming out is anytime anyone has ever asked me or said to me that they're writing an autobiography, and it's not to be a dick, but my initial reaction is, and it's not meant maliciously or mean, is like, what makes you think that your life has been so interesting that people would want to read about it? And now I have to ask myself that same question. I can only hope that people do find it interesting enough to take the ride. And if it helps you in any way, I'm grateful. And if you do take the time to buy it or read it or even listen to the audiobook, thank you. If you don't like it, I'm sure it'll make a good coaster or sex toy.
Wow.
Can we clear the rumor in the audiobook maybe and have like a little piece in there that says Steve Uncle Creepy Barton has never eaten mustard on pizza.
Stop it.
I will see
Stop
if I could put an addendum in just for that.
Save that for the next book, okay?
That was just fucking strange, man. I don't think I would never have expected anyone to say that to me. Like when you said those words, it was just mass confusion in my head. All of a sudden, there were visions of 9/11 again.
Right. All the clips of this thing are just going to be out the mustard on pizza.
It was a giant mustard bottle flying into the building. I'm just like, it's weird. No.
If 4G TV ever has a dunk tank at any convention that you're at, we'll put Paul in it and we'll make it mustard. Mustard. So he just got to fall into mustard,
No.
Yeah, dude, that's just weird, Paul. Yeah. I love you, but that's hideous. Absolutely hideous.
Also, I do want to ask you, are you going to be in any upcoming conventions, anything else like that?
I'm going to be at the Jersey Sideshow Market on December 7th, and my dog is knocking over all my shit. So hopefully whatever just slammed to the floor didn't break. But I'll be at the New Jersey HorrorCon Sideshow Market December 7th. I think that's going to be my last appearance for the year other than the book signing. And then I think I have something already booked for September in Maine. The Maine.
Okay.
Wow.
Listen, dude, I'm like herpes. I flare up everywhere. So you never know. I'll be somewhere. Come here.
Like I said, it's come a long way because if you go back and watch our original.
It's the culprit of all the.
Oh, look, he's beautiful.
Look at this motherfucker. Really cute, right? Until his asshole expands and he farts. Then he's
but you know why he came over there and was knocking stuff over, right? He heard the mustard on the pizza. He's
Okay,
like,
yeah,
oh,
yeah,
hell
yeah.
no. Who's
Stop it,
ruining my
stop
pizza?
it.
Even he was revolting against that.
So, but I was gonna say when like I mentioned before, you were not doing appearances and stuff. So yeah,
Now,
you've done a lot since
I
then.
I
Okay.
never felt like I was qualified to be honest with you. I mean, to me, it's I've done a lot, and it's kind of weird because like I've run into people who are so appreciative of the shit that I've done, and I didn't know anybody was ever appreciative of anything that I did because I only ever heard about shit when I fucked it up, you
Yeah.
know. So this whole appreciation thing is both wondrous, humbling, and absolutely shocking. And yeah, man, again, there's a part of me, there's still times that shows when I'm looking around and Ken Foree signing here and Costas Mandalore is signing there and Kane Hodder signing here and Adam Green is over there. I'm like, do I deserve to be in this room? You
Yeah.
know? And I still wrestle with that a little. But then again, I also make people draw dicks on all
Yeah.
pictures of my face.
So
So
there
I
you
mean,
go. So yeah.
I'll find some way at it.
So yeah, I mean, yeah, and you do deserve it. I mean, even if people didn't realize what you've done, you do deserve it.
Thank you. I again, I only did it because I love it, and
Yep.
it's who I am. You know?
Eh, yeah, and I have to say, the most recent movie that you put together, which was an anthology, that was very well done.
That was,
And
thank you. You know, what I wanted to do with that was the original All Hallows Eve was more or less just a vehicle for all of the short films for Damien Leone, including Terrifier, and Terrifier went on to explode. And it was due in part because that short film got in front of the right eyes. So with All Hallows Eve 2, I didn't want to go the route of having people film something specifically for the franchise for the film because there are so many good short films out there that nobody has seen. You know,
right,
when you do a short film, your lifespan is very finite. You do your festival run, you get featured on a website or two, and then your shit ends up on YouTube or Vimeo and it dies there. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to give people that same opportunity that Damien had and get their stuff in front of more eyes on a plateau they never would have been able to get to, you know? So it's very important to me that we do that.
yep, and one of the other people that we've interviewed before, I found him because he did exactly that. They took like three or four shorts, and they built bumpers around them to give it a through story, and then they featured those shorts on I can't even Shutter. I found it, and he's done two movies for Shutter that were like that, and so that's how I got to speak to him.
Well, you know, ever since the success of Terrifier 2, I have an email inbox filled with people that want to work with me. And I got a long memory. And
Yeah.
people have straight up said, I just want to use your name. And I'm like,
Ooh.
name, dude, that's the most personal thing I have. I'm not going to put my name on something unless I'm confident in it and really.
Right. Yeah.
And I decided with All Hell's Eve Inferno that if my name could be used for anything, I wanted to be used getting the work of some really talented and hardworking filmmakers to get their opportunity. To me, that is the best usage of my name I could think of. So that's why I did it.
Yep. And it makes sense because you don't want your name just up there. Because how many times have big people been burned by, having their name attached to something and it turns out to be total dog shit? You know,
Again, had I have sold out the numerous opportunities, I'd probably be living a much different, better life, I guess. But that shit don't mean nothing to me. I
and,
said it
yeah.
before, I say it again. I'd rather die a pauper with integrity than a rich douchebag with no soul. And that's how I am. That's how I'll always be. And that's it, man.
All right. Is there anything else you'd like everybody to know before we take off here?
Let me apologize for all the lunacy that you're going to read in the book. Again, I didn't realize it wasn't normal, but just thank you. Thank you for the life you've given me and the life you allow me to have. And I'm going to do my best to never let you down.
Very cool. Carlo, do you have any parting words?
I want to thank Steve for coming on talking to us this in depth. I know it's been a long interview, and I appreciate all your words of wisdom. You have a lot of insight and a lot of great takes on things that people should take from this and learn from. And as well, we got to throw a little pun at Paul because mustard on pizza never
Stop it.
belonged there and
Stop
never
it.
should. And now he's gonna be known as Mustard Pineapple the Paul.
No,
So
stop it.
Saint Mustard Pineapple Paul. I could come up with some great names. Got
So,
to
so
think of it.
Steve, next week, come to Florida because Carlos Services will be next week.
I lived in Florida for 2 years, dude. I am never going back to those prehistoric insects. Sorry.
Yeah.
Fuck those things.
Yeah. But no, I just want to thank you for coming on. Sharing your insights, your stories, and your ups and downs with us. I know there's a lot there, a lot of important things, and I hope that people go out and they see you and they buy this book, and if they see you at conventions, they bring this book to have it signed because this is just not. It's not like a book that you just thrown together, right? It's not like you had somebody help ghostwrite it. This is your authentic story.
There's only one part of the book I did not write, and it's for obvious reasons. It's a story that I shared that someone else wrote on the forums of Dread Central. That was it just makes me laugh every time I read it because it's so wonderfully poorly written that it's like to me it's like the funniest thing ever written. So being that I was the keeper of those message boards for so many years, I knew once it stopped I'd want to have it because it would be a time in my life when I want to read it. So I that's the only thing in the book I didn't write. I wrote 98% because I didn't write the foreword from Scott Johnson. Scott Johnson, he really believed in me. Scott's an amazing author. And he's like, I think you do have a great story to tell. And he was kind enough to write a foreword. But there's actually a page I wrote specifically for the people who have bought the book where I give them instructions. And if you're out there and you've read the book, Paul, you know it's coming. So if you ever get to bring it to me, I'm going to check. I'm going to make sure people did their homework.
Yeah.
Right.
And Carlo, if you want to read it, please, Paul, forward it to him. It's all good.
Absolutely. Or he'll have it read to him. Carlos a little, but that's okay.
That's right, Paul. You know what? I haven't had story time with Paul in a long time, Paul.
That's right.
Get on Skype and read the whole thing to me.
I,
One
I
by
kind of
one.
I would kind of pay to be a fly on the wall for that. That would be interesting. Okay, gentlemen, thank
All
you
right.
so much. And yeah,
Thank you.
find me on every social media thing. Just look up Uncle Creepy. I'm not hard to find. And yeah, man, buy my shit.
There you go.
Well, thank you, Steve. Everybody, enjoy your day. I hope you enjoyed listening. Just drop your comments below. Reach out to Steve. Get his book. Get it
Oh,
signed. Go
I
see him
already
at
stopped.
conventions.
I already stopped. So
And
you're gonna have to catch your recording for that. So
I no, I'm still recording on my end, Paul.
okay, good.
And
Charge now with his mustard on his people. On his
That's right.
fuck that.
man, he's talking to his mustard friends, I think.
Flex, Carlo, flex.
Yeah, Paul. Take that mustard and go somewhere the sun does. Anyway, thanks for listening. Enjoy the rest of your day, everybody. Leave those comments below.